Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Lee The Dorset Spur and this is another episode of the weekly Tottenham News Review. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like, share and comment in the comment section below. If you're listening on an audio platform, please hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. So let's talk about Tottenham over this last week. How are you feeling as a Spurs fan? Well, of course, let's start off by talking about the draw against Leeds. What an opportunity missed for sure. All the hopes were that we were going to win this game, give ourselves that real decent buffer against West Ham. And of course, it didn't turn out like that because of why would it? This is Tottenham Hotspur. We do it the hard way since 1882. And so we are always going to go through this pressure and stress. Overall, it wasn't a terrible game from a Spurs perspective. We played fairly well in patches, had some decent opportunities. It was an unchanged side, which we kind of expected because, of course, he doesn't really have an awful lot of options at this moment in time. And so unchanged side who did a good performance against Aston Villa, obviously, and so the hopes were this would be the one. West Ham controversially lost against Arsenal on the Sunday, and so our opportunity to really move ahead was there for us to see, but obviously didn't go. And of course, the whole game will be considered the game of two penalties. One that was given, one that wasn't. Of course, everyone's bias will determine whether you think either or were not penalties. But obviously, I'm only looking at it from a Tottenham perspective, and I was at the time very upset, should I say, about the one given against us, mainly because I felt that Matisse Tell was in an open area. He didn't have players around him. It wasn't congested or anything like that. He did a stupid bicycle kick whilst up in the air with his back to any players. And the Leeds player put his head in there and got kicked in the nut. Well, of course, if you're putting your feet up that high, it's going to be classed as a high boot. And because it's a high boot, it's going to be awarded as a penalty. And looking at it subsequently, I don't think we've got too many complaints about it, if I'm being really honest. Looking at it with my Wurzel Gummidge sensible head on, as opposed to my Wurzel Gummidge Tottenham head on. So yeah, I kind of accepted it. The second one that was drawn by Maddison. Let's talk about Maddison in a minute. Again, I still, even getting on for a week later, I still cannot see how that's not given. I've seen lots of comments about he got a touch on the ball, he won the ball. There's no way. I didn't see any movement in that ball at all. Dermot Gallagher, ex-referee, has come out and said, yeah, it's not a penalty, but the other one was. But for me, he says it's clear that he touches the ball. I don't think it is clear that he touches the ball. The fact that they didn't give it any consideration is really, really disappointing. And that, I guess, is what Maddison has said about it. He says that he moved the ball with his foot, presumably from the tackle coming in against him. But of course, it wasn't given, and we get the outcome that we get from it. Now, the other interesting thing about this is, of course, because Maddison has said that the referees basically bottled it, although he didn't say it in those terms. Now we're all hearing about, could he be charged with it's relating to questioning the referee's integrity or something along those lines. Can't remember the exact wording, but that's what they're kind of talking about. Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it, when you can't give an opinion because you might say the referee got it wrong when clearly there are a significant amount of people saying the referee got it wrong, right? Referees should not be not under scrutiny. You can accept that a referee makes a mistake, of course you can, but at the same time as that, you've got VAR and all these people sat in rooms or whatever looking at it from every different angle, supposed to be there to see whether he has made an error and give him that feedback. Now, with the Matisse Tell one, the referee didn't see anything wrong with it. Okay, he ran away, let the game continue, blah blah blah. The VAR calls it back. He looks at it and he goes, "Okay, that's a penalty. Fine." In terms of the Tottenham one, waved away straight away, no interest whatsoever. Now you cannot tell me that there isn't question about whether that, because you can look at it from so many different angles and you can see, in my view, that the Leeds player didn't touch the ball. Now you can argue that there are other angles that say he did touch the ball. Well, how did they look at all of that in the space of, you know, however many seconds it was? And I joked previously that you could change 4 F1 tires in the time it took them um, to look at that. They just, you know, just waved it away, no interest whatsoever. And then you get to a point where you will obviously get frustration from players and managers and fans when they're going, well, hold on a minute, this just doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem consistent. I can see West Ham fans are saying exactly the same. West Ham fans are saying that it's tipped in our favour. We're saying it's tipped not necessarily in West Ham's favour, because I don't think they are trying to give a better decision to West Ham because they prefer West Ham to stay up than Tottenham to stay up. I don't think that. But we argue that we're getting shit decisions. They argue they're getting shit decisions. And it all comes down to consistency. I mean, West Ham's issue is the decision not to give them a goal because they felt that the keeper wasn't as impeded as it's being made out to be, or that they should have had a penalty or 2 penalties for what happened to players against them. And it's difficult to argue that there is a lack of consistency, because had that been the other way around, you know, and I know that they would definitely have allowed that goal. We've seen it time and time again. Now, I don't follow loads of other teams, don't watch loads and loads of other teams' football and stuff like that. I don't get into the semantics of it all. But when you're seeing it played out here, there, and everywhere of different things that have happened over the course of the season, you put them all together and you go, well, where is the consistency? So, of course, Maddison is going to be upset about it. Now, the interesting thing about this is Maddison may well get called up, but we don't see anything happening. And this isn't a dig at West Ham, because they're, in my view, right to call out the issue of consistency from their point of view. You don't see anything against Bowen or any of the Souček or any of those guys. And I'm sure there's other clubs with similar scenarios, right? But then may not get called out. Now, the point I was going to make Maddison was, it's great to have him back. He made his long-awaited debut back into the first team. Got to play something like 20 odd minutes, more than they was expecting. To be fair, because there was 13 minutes of added time, but he did well. He looked fresh. He looked different level, to be honest with you, with some of his passing compared to what we've been seeing. And of course, he's just come back, and now it looks like, if they were to charge him, that he could actually be suspended, which is an absolute nightmare. You know, you're going to suspend the player who is only going to probably do 10, 20 minutes of any game of the last 2 that's left. So, and that could have a big impact on the relegation battle. So it just feels like, yeah, once again, everything is kind of pushing against you, stopping you from getting anywhere. And like I say, I don't think this is because they want to keep West Ham in the league and get Tottenham out, but I do feel that Tottenham getting relegated is a much, much bigger story than anything else that's happened this season. Arsenal could go on and win the league, and it will still not make the headlines in the same way that Tottenham getting relegated would. Um, End of the season, last day drama is exactly what Sky Sports want. Of course, going to the last game for Arsenal to win the league, or City to win the league. Last game of the season for either Tottenham or West Ham to get relegated. All those scenes at the ends of the games of fans crying into their beer, or little kids getting all upset, or fans chanting Enoch out or Sullivan out or whatever it might be, or chants of second again, ole ole, and all that sort of stuff. They're gonna love that. That's really what Sky Sports, TNT, all of those kind of media companies will want, and it'll be great stories for Talk Sport or all of those people. Exactly that. So you can kind of see why they would want that, and it just does feel like everything's geared up to make that happen. But let's take my tin hat off and get back into other stories making the headlines this week. So I'm not shocked. You're probably not shocked. But it seems to have made big news that Kulusevski has not made the World Cup squad for Sweden. Probably due to the fact he hasn't kicked a ball in over a year. So, and there's just no sign of it, is there? There is no sign of Kulusevski coming back to any level of football. De Zerbi talked about him texting Kulu and him saying, "I'll be back next week." But I haven't seen anything about that since. Not seen any media feedback or anything like that. Maybe later today at the press conference, if there is one today. I'm not sure whether it's today or whether it'll be later on because the game is not until Tuesday. But I haven't seen anything about it, so I'm assuming that he hasn't come back. So my concern about that is he ever really coming back to football in any kind of level? That's my concern. Now, he said he's feeling good. He's had further surgery to remove something that shouldn't have been there following this long issue that he's had. But it's hard to know, isn't it? I just can't see him coming back. If I'm honest, I got this horrible feeling that Kulusevski will never play professional football again at that level. But we shall see. Fingers crossed. Hope I'm absolutely wrong. I hope he's actually really in training and it's coming along really, really well. And maybe he just needs the summer as a stopgap just to make sure it's all cleared out. But we'll see. The good news, of course, is that Bergvall is, however, included in the Sweden squad, even though he has been a bit part player for Spurs this season. But he has looked decent in patches. Obviously had a few injury problems himself, but good news for him. He is a young man going to the World Cup. That will give him a good boost in that, and I look forward to seeing him playing and hopefully doing well for Sweden. Let's talk a couple of bits about transfer rumours, a couple of big ones that seem to keep being bandied around. Vuskovic is now wanted by Bayern Munich or Barcelona. So, of course, young lad, 19 years old, ripping it up in the Bundesliga for Hamburg. He has scored half a dozen goals and assisted and been captain and all the rest of it. Had a bit of an injury, so he's been out a little bit. But really, really well thought of by Hamburg for sure. And really, really well thought of by Spurs. Now, he is in contract until the 29-30 season, so Spurs will not want to let him go, but presumably he's not on big wages. So maybe the time is to negotiate those big wages and maybe get a few more years on his contract, because I think potentially he could be a massive, massive player for us. There is, of course, lots of talk about, whether we go down, whether we stay up. So let's assume we stay up. There's still question marks around Van der Ven, who is wanted by Liverpool and Man United. There is still talk about Romero, who doesn't always feel like he wants to be there. So those two could be being in conversations somewhere. You've also got the Radu Dragushin, who hasn't picked up a lot of games this season. But it's early days under De Zerbi. He's only had sort of 4 games or whatever it is. And so there is time for him. But with his agent, who seems to be, you know, um, trying to sell him left, right, and centre to all these big clubs, may well try and move him on out of Spurs. So which leaves potentially one of 3 spaces for him to come back into, if any of those do leave. So yeah, we'll see what goes from there. But he is under contract, so presumably he'll just come back to Tottenham at the end of the season after the World Cup, and we'll see what happens from there. De Zerbi can have a really good look at him and go through this squad and decide who he's keeping, who he's not keeping. I think if we go down into the Championship, I think he definitely stays, and we definitely use him. If we stay in the Premier League and nobody moves, then he may well go back to Hamburg for another year. But fingers crossed, it will be on bigger money and with a better contract. The other one as well is Polinia. Polinia was asked of De Zerbi, would he want to keep him because obviously he's only on loan, and he said 100%, we need that sort of player, we need that sort of person, we need that man, indicating that some of these players are just young men and not proper out and out hairy assed men who are strong and know where they're going and what they're doing. Some of these other players are young boys still learning their trade, still developing, and he definitely wants him. However, there is talk that he could go back to Portugal for family reasons or personal reasons, I think it was quoted. So potentially he could go back. I'm hoping that isn't the case. He's definitely not going back to Bayern because Bayern don't want him. But I think if we stay in the Premier League, I think we get to keep him. If we go down into the Championship, he may well decide that actually I don't want to play in the Championship. I want to go off back to Portugal and see where things pan out there. Unless, of course, another Premier League side comes into him. Me personally, I'd keep him. I think he is a very, very good defensive player. I think he wins so many tackles. I think he's second in terms of the amount of tackles that he's won, over 100 in these games. So I think he's key, especially if you're trying to use Bentancur alongside you with a bit of kind of offensive duties, with Palhinha being the more defensive duties. I think they work quite well together. So we'll see how that pans out. Of course, I can't not say about Daniel Levy getting a CBE. Really riles up a lot of people, but this is a CBE based on his contribution to charities and to development of the local area in Tottenham rather than anything football related. And I think you have to recognise that there is a big contribution from him in terms of work-wise, building the stadium, all the jobs created since the stadium, all the attractions that are coming in there, from the F1 to the Skywalk to the stadium tour, to the concerts, to the boxing, to the football, to the American football, to the rugby. There's a lot going on there that really does help the local community. The improvement to the railway station as well, work that was done there. And I don't think it's finished yet. There's still a lot that they actually wanted to do. They do own an awful lot of other property around that area that they would like to redevelop and stuff. Personally, I hope that there is a regeneration in the area. It is a poor area. But I'd like to think that the work that goes there benefits the people that are there, not necessarily people coming in and gentrifying the area and taking that away. There's people that have lived there all their lives and deserve something better than what they've currently got there, because David Lammy and the governments have never really invested in that area and developed it and made it quite as good as maybe it should be. And then let's just kind of finish off talking about the weekend, of course, because this weekend is another massive weekend. There's only 2 points in it between Tottenham and West Ham. West Ham take on Newcastle at St James's. difficult game for West Ham. Newcastle not doing as well as they would like to have been doing, but it's one of those. It's 50-50. West Ham are, they've had a difficult season for sure. That's why they're down there. But are capable of beating Newcastle in the same way I think Newcastle are capable of beating West Ham. I think it's going to be a tough one for them. I think potentially this could end up in a draw because I think Newcastle haven't really got anything to play for. So maybe their heads may not be in it. I'm not saying that they're doing that on purpose, but I think it's nature, isn't it? Some of these players will be looking towards the World Cup, and so will they want to get fully into it? So that could play a part of it. But yeah, for me, hopefully Newcastle absolutely smash West Ham. As from a selfish point of view, it's interesting that the referee and the the VAR referee for this game is the same ones that refereed Tottenham versus Leeds. So let's see if there's any consistency in their application in this game as opposed to the what there is. It will be totally under scrutiny for sure if West Ham get a penalty or Newcastle get a penalty in the last minute and all this sort of stuff. It would be really interesting to see how that pans out. Of course, so let's assume West Ham do beat Newcastle. We'll play it from that point of view. That puts them 1 point ahead of us, and we go to Chelsea, needing to get something. Now, I know and you know that we have one of the most awful records at Chelsea, and so I'm not gonna say we get a win there. I just can't see it. All the things that I've said about Newcastle, nothing to play for, and feeling that it's all heads on holiday and the World Cup and all the rest of it. It won't mean nothing in terms of Chelsea versus Tottenham. The fans will absolutely not let the Chelsea players not know that they will want them to beat us. But again, they aren't playing particularly well, even though they're in the FA Cup final, believe it or not. They're in the FA Cup final at the weekend, so could still take silverware this season. But then coming up against Tottenham on Tuesday will be a bigger game for them. It's really sad that their fans would rather lose an FA Cup and relegate Tottenham than actually win silverware. That's how entitled they've become, which is comical, really. If you're from the 80s like me, you'll remember oh too well the old Chelsea before the money. But I do think there is an opportunity there with them being as poor as they have been, that provided we keep it sensible and don't get sucked into, the atmosphere of it all, we keep it calm, we keep our nerve. If we get a draw out of that, then we are on level points going into last day, which would be the dream scenario for the TV companies, needing us to win against Everton or. Well, no, so it doesn't really matter, does it? Provided we match whatever West Ham get out of Leeds. So are Leeds going to be as up for it against West Ham as they were against Tottenham? You would like to think they would be. So provided we match that result, we stay up. So it's a big weekend. This weekend, excuse me. Hay fever killing me this year. So yeah, another really big weekend. Let's see what happens between West Ham and Newcastle. Let's see what happens to Chelsea in the FA Cup. Be interesting to see whether they get absolutely smashed in that or whether they win it. What that does to them for the Tuesday. But yeah, anyway, that's everything from me. Again, I know I ramble on a long time, so credit to people that are able to get through to the end of these videos. So thanks for watching. And as I said, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, please do comment, share, and subscribe if you don't already. If you're listening on an audio platform, please do hit that follow button and leave a review if you can. And all that's left to say is, up the Spurs.